Yo.
The man who did it.
The man who did it.
Hey, Glenn.
Did it. What is it?
It? Oh, discovered the other world.
Yeah.
I read that. I'm in the middle of reading that book, Editorpa.
Yeah.
That book really, that's a really good book, man.
Tells you the story.
Yeah. It's funny how they put it in there like that.
Come from the other side.
It made me think, it showed me how much we're so arrogant and we think that we know everything, but we don't understand that the education that's given us, the science is giving us, it limits our view. It's not telling us the whole story.
That's why it's called research.
Yeah.
Search was already done.
Yeah, it's so old.
And it's been kept secret.
Mhm. Yeah, and how we talked about how, basically like time and stuff like that is just a human concept. Because when you go out in space, it's eternity.
Yeah, but yet, see, a lot of people on the net who heard what I had to say all said they believed. And then somebody told them, don't believe. And they said, okay, I don't believe.
I know. I see that. And it wasn't a fact of just believing it. It just things in my life, I guess.
Yeah.
I verified it for me. And I knew it wasn't going to be verifiable in the way that most people are used to. And that's the story in that book, Editorpa.
Yeah.
It was very, he realized, and I felt like that was like me,
Sure. At the end, nobody recognizes who you are. And you know a lot, but nobody wants to know that you know.
Yeah. And I don't know, I guess that's the story of my life right now so far. Yeah. And I heard that you found new information. You came across new information. Dana was telling me something
on
about
what? I find new information every day.
Yeah. Yeah. On basically the moho could also be destroyed too.
Yeah. Yeah. That the computers have basically taken the information beyond their need for the Neanderthals, and are basically going to make certain that the nova heats up the plates of the Earth, but also the moho, so that everything outside of the computer's range will be destroyed. And the two computers reside within the upper mantle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never knew that. Wow.
They can live without air. They can live without heat or cold or water. They're in there, and they can wait out the period and then do the mechanical experiment that will begin the process of recreating life on the surface and start from scratch. So even the Neanderthaler is not coming out of this a winner.
From what I see, I think the Neanderthals lost a long time ago.
Well, they lost the daily activity of managing things that were happening, but they thought that in fact they'd be able to be the lords of the ring, where in fact they're going to be their DNA shipped off into the universe along with men and women in a recombined slave.
Uh, so I thought the computer was going to be destroyed too. I thought it was just like it was just so smart that it was stupid.
Well, again, I have to remind you, we're not dealing with prophecy here.
Oh yeah.
It all depends on what we do and how we can negotiate a new arrangement with the Neanderthals because they know everything and how to prevent this from coming to a conclusion that the computer has in mind.
So, the only people on this planet that have contact with them is, from what I understand, would be like the gatekeepers.
Yeah, they would be Cro-magnon from below ground and Roma above ground. The evidence suggests that at a period in time around 17,000 BC, which would have been at the height of the Ice Age, as a Cro-magnon, I was sent to the surface to observe, analyze, and conclude. Where does the ice go after 8,000 years of buildup on the planet? What parts of the planet are still available for human life? Where are these parts? And then, now that you know the maximum ice that you get in that period of time, you have to go back and wait to see what happens when the opposite conditions exist. When a warm body comes flying past the solar system and draws the Earth orbit into an ellipse. And as it melts, where does it melt to? And when all of that was worked out, what remained on the surface of the Earth were the leftovers of the visitors from below, Cro-magnon, such as I, from a period manufactured at about 40,000 BC. When those remnants were discovered in the Lascaux caves of southern France, they were then able to dissect from the coprolites, Coprolites. They were able to dissect the component parts and separate the DNA and re-clone the existing people who had basically come at that period in time. And the net result of that was a family that was manufactured in the period just past the Crusades. So obviously they learned these lessons, Knights Templars, learned these lessons while they were on the Crusades in the Middle East. And then they came back and were able to clone from the coprolites that they found in the caves new versions of the human beings. That family is known today as the Grimaldis.
Yeah, you told me they were Cro-magnon.
Grimaldis are Prince Rainier's family of Monaco. Obviously, there was a Governor General of Canada, the last French Governor General of Canada, who came from that area in France, and he brought the secret to Canada with him. His name was Vaudreuil de Rigaud.
The Rigaud.
That's where you get the come back, born again thing. And all of that information was known to the Vatican and to the Anglican Church, who are the basic reform party of the Catholic Church. And a deal was made while he was here to hide the information near Ottawa. And at one stage of the game, from that information and from leftover DNA that had been brought from France, I was made. I was made to come to the site where this material and all the science behind it would be made available to a group of women, we men, called the Valkyries. So that at the end times, they could, in principle, clone all of the top fighters on behalf of Freemasonry for the final battle at the end of the world, known as Ragnarok. And here I am. The problem is there's a defect in the DNA left over from the original DNA from which Cro-magnon was made. And that's always been my difficulty in kind of grasping the concept here of, if I was born in 40,000 BC in a laboratory, how come I remember things going back all the way to 60,000 BC approximately, at a time when Neanderthaler and not cave dwellers, but clan mothers lived in an area adjoining each other in Africa, when they worked together before the big fight between the two groups in 58,800. So obviously what occurred was that clan mothers provided Neanderthaler with female eggs, and those were put in storage. But when it came time to separate and the Neanderthalers go their own way, they decided to clone a race of servants for themselves, which we call Cro-magnon. The reason it's called Cro-magnon is because the crow, raven, is the most intelligent of animals.
Oh, it's funny. I was just watching a crow moving around a squirrel the other day. The way trying to.
Magnon is the concept around Gnostics, knowledge.
Oh yeah. So that movie, they had a movie called The Crow, and how it was basically reborn and
Well, in experiments done with crows, they found that the crow could make tools. One of the only birds who would make tools. What they did was they put a hole in the ground and put a little pail with water in the pail and a handle on it. But it was too far down for the crow to reach. And they put pieces of wire on the ground near the hole. 3 pieces, 2 of which already had a kind of a hook on the end, thinking that the crow would work out which was the most appropriate wire. He would pick up the ones with the hook and feed it down the hole and pull up the little pail by the handle. But he went one step further. He set aside the ones with the curve on it, and he made his own from the one that had no curve.
Wow.
And he pulled it out. So it demonstrates a kind of intelligence that was not believed could exist in a bird. And it basically comes down to prove that original linkage, if you go back in time from birds, you get to that animal that climbed the tree. And that was a dinosaur that is about the size of a cat. So it basically made an animal that climbed trees out of it, monkeys, a bird that flew in the air, flying dinosaurs that ended up making all the other birds, and the animal that walked on the ground that made human beings. Land mother, eventually. But millions of years in time in between.
Yeah, that's another thing. When I was reading that book at a tour, but how the reason why people don't look at animals like that, because we think that like supposedly we're the best, or but in other ways you look at senses, their senses are more, I guess, efficient.
Yeah. Everything a person lacks as a human being
it's probably down
is compensated by something else they can do better. So before a person laughs at somebody because he's lame or has any apparent problem, they should start thinking that a blind person can hear better. Yeah. A deaf person can sense things differently. So there's always a compensation factor in physics. The same thing as I said, as you destroy Earth and you turn it into black water, there's an automatic compensation that requires other material to rise higher above sea level to compensate for the fact that some things went down. The Earth is a completely self-adjusting mechanism. And the same thing exists in animals and in human beings. What they lack in size of brain, they make up in sensory abilities.
Really interesting. Yeah, I seen another movie. It's called Enemy Mine.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, that one was really obvious how they show But it's all like mirrored. You have to mirror everything.
Yeah.
Because how they put the, and he said something interesting. The hermaphrodite. He said you humans are alone within yourselves. That's why you separated your sexes. And I guess you have to mirror that.
Yeah.
In a sense. So I guess what he's trying.
Well, that's why we're called individuals. We cannot be divided. We're already divided.
We
are indivisible individuals.
Mm-hmm. And that's what they mean, because I've been reading like a little bit stuff that I find like on this Zoroastrian belief, but like in the Gnostics and stuff, and Plato talked about. They talk about like emanations and the primitive light, going back to that state of perfection.
Yeah, but the thing is,
it's a pseudo.
They're telling you that you're going back to hermaphrodite.
Yeah.
But you're not.
Yeah.
You're going back to a pseudo-Triphibian hermaphrodite.
Do you think that like before when we were hermaphrodites, you think that was we were more efficient that way, or?
Each evolutionary aspect of this brings upon a new combination. And none of it means better or worse. It just means different. And it's the same thing as creating a pseudo-hermaphrodite. It means different. Now, the differences have been calculated to be more appropriate to serving a master. And an individual, as we are, is more appropriately manufactured to be free in the sense of not controlled, not in the sense of costing nothing.
That's what they keep showing in these movies. Like another movie, I don't know if you've seen this, called Blade Runner.
I think I saw a commercial, but I don't think I saw the movie.
Yeah, I think it's 87. The movie came out. It's with Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And they have these genetically superior beings that they make to serve them. And but they build fail safes in them that they only last 4 years because they start building their own emotions and all this type of thing. But this is all like plays. They always put a play. It's always outer space or in the future.
It's fiction.
Yeah.
The same thing as the Bible is a fiction about what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, and that right there is a science that like the Magus, I guess, these type of people.
Yeah.
That they knew since I guess the
Magi just basically means genetically engineered mother. And a genetically engineered mother is us. We are the Magus. From coprolites. We are king shit of Turd Island.
Well, I know you told me I come from shit.
Well,
my name.
England is the place that sent the original immigrants in this direction, along with France. And you got to remember that we started the journey in Ur, and we ended up here in North America being managed by a financial system run by a Canadian bank called TD, Toronto Dominion is what they say it's for, but they don't use the words anymore. They just call it TD bank.
Third bank.
Well, if you take T and D and you open it up and you put in the middle, where we come from, you got turd. And that's basically where you can retrieve the best old DNA.
Oh, and where did he get the turds from? You flip it backwards, it's from the dirt, pal.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, yeah, lately, for me, I've just been doing a lot of reading, a lot of stuff. But when I read this, I'm reading this Masonic stuff. I'm just feeling now like this is all antiquated stuff. I feel like it's beginner type of thing. It's like, it's just telling me, maybe I'm just finding out the story of everything, and I guess I'm learning a lot, but I'm finding out the story of how everything happened and everything.
The only reason you can have access to this stuff is because we're close to the end.
Yeah.
It's like climbing up a pyramid. When you're on the first level, you have those big rocks in front of you, and you can't see anything. But when you reach the top of the pyramid, you're still climbing, but the thing in front of you is narrower, and you can see around it more, and you can turn around and see the valley down below and all of that stuff. And in order to get into space, they had to provide basic data to people who had the random access memory. And that meant other people would get their hands on it and use it for other purposes. But because their schedule was set up in such a way that they knew there was a shelf life, they had to get to space and out of the solar system to the Oort cloud in a period ending at about 2009. They figured it's a race that we're going to win because right after that we're going to be destroyed.
So when they destroy everything, you're saying they're going to destroy like even all like the machines and everything that they.
The Himalayas will be destroyed. The Alps will be destroyed.
Even the southern hemisphere, you said?
Yeah, 1,000 years later.
Yeah. So they're just gonna start all over again with the new slaves they have.
Yeah.
It's gonna build everything to. Even they'll have enough time to build that to basically build, spaceships to go out into unless they already started doing that.
Well, there is no time limit as far as they're concerned, because whatever destroys the surface of the planet does not affect the mantle. It is safe from fire, safe from water, and if there's no human beings to worry about, you don't need air, that kind of stuff.
Does it like it doesn't even need like food to?
No.
Whoa, that's a really and you said it's a chemical computer.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's really high tech stuff.
Basically, just waiting a period of time out, and whether that's 20,000 years or 30,000 years, it's peanuts in a concept of things that have been evolving for billions of years.
Yeah. Because it knows that like time is just a concept, like I was saying. It's because you really think about it. It's eternal, everything.
Yeah.
And like, of course, yeah, we age and die, but we're all like eternal. I guess, yeah, we're all,
if you look outside and you see grass and trees and flowers, they all are born, they live, and they die. But when they die, their DNA is there in the ground, and it starts up again when the conditions are appropriate again.
So it never really dies.
No. Never dies. It just gets modified, and it's a system of energy that is in different forms depending on the conditions around it.
And that's another thing too I came across, and I think some religions actually they make dogma out of it, using their doctrines, because you know how I say that everything, it comes from like the energy, and the sun gives off energy which is stored in the cells of the plants, and then the cells give it off to other life beings, and we get.
Hang on for just a second here. Excuse me, I had to go to the washroom.
No, all right. And so you ever tried to wonder, like, what type of, like, what type of food, and like, I guess they can even like grow anything? Because in that book, it seemed like it gave, like, I guess, some hints.
At the same time as all of that was being talked about, Francis Bacon wrote The New Atlantis, wrote Advancements in Learning, and described how artificial foods would exist in the future, and that the taste of something could be replicated in a totally different material. So it's all been known of before, because we eat the food that is available to us here. They eat the food which is available to them there.
Yeah, because nature works in one way above ground, but then there's another side of it that we don't see below ground. Oh, wow, that would be really interesting to study that nature, because we're so. But even this nature is pretty, profound in itself. Let me see. So yeah,
you're only scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Because this is the story of at least 100,000 years, at least 4 precessions that you are basically scratching into. And people who've kept records for 3 or 4 precessions know what's going to happen next in the concept of the solar system and the movement of the planets and the stars and all of that stuff. And that's what astrology is all about. Is they've linked all of the events that happen in the solar system during a precession to the activities that they want to have happen at that time, or at activities that were happening under those kinds of conditions. So it's, on the one hand, astrology is kind of voodoo magic for the day-to-day type of stuff you read in the papers. Mm-hmm. But it has a much broader purpose when it's linked to benchmarks. If you've got a calendar that runs 25,800 years, mm-hmm. and you know what's going to happen ahead of time because you've seen it happen 3 times before, mm-hmm. or 4 times before, you can plan things and make yourself look like a superior being.
Yeah.
Make yourself look like a god.
Yeah, that's what this thing keeps doing. Like, they'll talk about nature, and they're right in a lot of respects, but then they attribute it all to God and give it all to him the credit. Like, it just doesn't make sense when you see that. It's like, how can you attribute that all to this thing? But I guess
the only difference is in time they have also learned how to affect what happens, because they can now induce things that would only happen under different conditions, but they can create the conditions and cause things to happen. Like if you were going to heat up the earth, you needed a solar body come flying by the solar system and attract the earth into that elliptical orbit so that it would cut down the time when it went back around in a circle around the sun, would cut back the time that winter existed, and therefore it would get warmer. But now with particle accelerators, they can create new atoms. And a new atom is basically a new recipe for creating different life. You have to think of an atom as basically being a hadron, a bag. And in that bag, you have the component parts of an atom. You can have electrical parts and you can have chemical parts. So you've got things like quarks and neutrons. It's that combination within that bag that is used in the way we call it an atom, an atom. But if you were to take some of the components of that bag out and recombine them with components of another bag, you would make totally different lifestyles. The question is, would that new lifestyle adapt to the conditions we exist in today? Or would that new lifestyle say, for me to survive, I have to destroy what's already here and start over again? The concept of the dinosaur dying out so that human beings could live. Well, atoms don't give up their material easily.
When the dinosaurs died out, was that a natural occurrence, or was that induced by?
Well, there were no human beings 3 million years ago or 60 million years ago that could have affected this activity. And what is seen as having happened is a large comet comes in and acts as a particle accelerator, causing a collision with the Earth. And when you collide atoms, what happens is everything that's in the bag gets thrown out of the bag, and these quarks and neurons are basically up there looking for another bag to get into, because they can't stand being outside. And all of that exists in a fraction of a second. So that's your bang that happens in the collision and the movement to other bags. Now, in moving to other bags, they may create fission or fusion and create an atomic reaction that causes nuclear type blasts. Or they may, in fact, merge into a bag that says we can make new life, and that new life can adapt to these conditions. The problem that they have is the proof, the evidence of how that works exactly is only able to be seen in the first fraction of the first second after the Big Bang. Because once the Big Bang has occurred and things have changed bags, things are different. So you can't see how they were before because they're now different. In a particle accelerator, the concept is you're sending particles and they're flying around in opposite directions in an accelerator. They're all basically atoms sitting, containing bags of these quarks and neutrons, electrons, whatever, in the bag. And when a collision occurs, they've got high-speed cameras now that they will be able to photograph what these things are. They can explain what they are, quarks. They can explain it in a conceptual manner, but they've never seen one. So once they see it and they see where it goes and what it turns into, what it wants then to create, they'll know for sure how things work. That's why we've never been able so far to have a unified theory of the universe, because all of the things that were said made up the theory of relativity change when you go back in time to that first fraction of the first second. And it doesn't work beyond it because it was different before then. Like the concept of gravity does not function in their model of the first fraction of a second. Therefore, it had to be something else. And that's what they hope to find with a particle accelerator.
Oh, so the Big Bang, you're saying, is basically that atom moving from one bag to another.
Exactly. It's the same concept in a much larger environment, but it's the movement from one bag to another that creates a new way of life.
And that only happens in outer space, right? It doesn't happen.
Well, it happens in outer space, and it really doesn't cause a problem because there's nothing there unless it happens in the big way, like the Big Bang, as opposed to just the bang. There's nothing there for it to react against or create new life. The problem is now they want to do it underground. And they
so that's a whole other atmosphere.
Where there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So they may know what happens when an atom components jump from one to the other in a bag, but they don't know the effect of it on its surroundings underground. And my position is that the computer if not the Neanderthal, or at least the computer, has fooled them into believing that this can all be managed. Whereas the computer already knows that it's going to light the coal seam and it's going to destroy people. And it's going to destroy land, and it's going to destroy mountains, and it's going to mix in water and earth into a new component called black water. So these guys are working with the false conception that they're going to survive. Every one of these people causing us problems believes that by joining the system, you get to survive and live better.
Yeah.
Well, the computer has a different view of things. The computer says, why? I don't need these people.
It's pure lies. This thing is like a thing in the Matrix. It was like this logic. It's just what's effective, and so it looks at everything. Yeah. And I don't know. They've probably done this in mythologies, like try to personify these, like greed and lust for power, all that stuff. Because that's how it's used. That's what it's using.
Well, you have to think of one word more than any other word, and that's the word recreation. So they are telling us that this is all about recreating human beings in a manner that will be better for human beings. But the word recreation has a totally different connotation when you put the accent on different syllables.
Recreation?
Recreation. It's their fun way of spending eternity in the moho discontinuity with nothing to do. So they basically get their fun by causing us trouble.
It's like the little it's like Loki. And
yeah.
This wants to cause trouble.
Yeah, we men. Yeah. The more trouble they can cause us, the happier they are. War, pestilence, famine, and disease, the more of it, the better. They fund both sides.
They are both sides.
And they gather up the lessons learned from each miserable activity they induce upon us.
Wow. And now I think about it now, like in the past, like the Black Plague, Red Plague, these things were all engineered.
Yeah. They want to know what happens. And they sit back and watch millions of people die and say, yeah, this is a really good one. Eh?
These people, crazy, man. And I see that, like how these diseases today, right? And people never even think, like most people never even ponder, hey, why am I having these diseases? Because they're like, oh, isn't it great we have this medication that just cures this disease? And I think, why even have it? Why is disease even around?
Well, that's they have two computers. One takes all the information in and crunches all of the numbers. This is what we did. This is what it caused. These are the solutions we tried. This is the one that works. So therefore, sometime in the future, if you want to get rid of 1 million people, this particular one will do it in 6 weeks. That particular one will do it in 4 weeks. This one can do it in 2 days. This one can do it in 2 hours. This one can do it overnight. It comes down to, the same thing as what do you remove from people to cause them to die? Well, if you have nothing of interest in your life, you die sooner. You're bored. If you have life without food, you can last, say, 30 days or 60 days. If you have life without water, you can last 3 or 4 or 5, 10 days. But if you have life without air, it can only last 4 or 5 seconds. So all of this information goes into the computer. It's all crunched down, and once all of the numbers are collected and they know what causes things, what cures things, and what net effect it did, they send the information then over to the other computer who puts out a manual. And at a future place in time, someone will look at a situation and say, we have 1 billion people here. They are not listening to us anymore. We need to get rid of these people within so much time. We need to give them time enough to clean up some of the act that they've messed up here. But we need to do it within, say, 5 years. They'll look up in the manual and say, okay, war, pestilence, famine, or disease, which one do we need for this activity? Here's the number of people, here's the time frame, blah, blah, and then the answer will be in the book. They'll apply that and get rid of their problem because they tested it all here on Earth. The collection agencies for this kind of activity are things like the Nobel Prizes and the Pulitzer Prizes and the Olympics and all of those activities that NASA is involved in, or Jet Propulsion Laboratory, gives them data. It ends up being a manual. In the old days, the first manuals they put out were called Confucius.
Yeah, and Confucius, I think he got from what he learned from Zoroaster. I'm not sure, or they had like
he got it from the Taoists,
yeah.
who got it from Buddhism,
yeah.
who got it from Hinduism, and
that's all Oriental philosophy, basically.
Yeah. So then you have the concept of taking the manual and turning it into allegory.
Yeah, and that's what happened. That's what Egypt did. They
and the Greeks.
Yeah, and the Greeks. Yeah. So that's what I'm learning. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm reading stuff like that, like learning.
And then you have it converted into Roman mythology and Norse mythology.
Yeah.
So it's
German.
They establish a concept where you can get the information in a book. In the Middle East, they call it the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran.
And I'm looking at this group that wrote the Bible, the Essenes.
Yeah.
I'm reading a little bit, and you said
they're insiders.
Yeah,
because that's what the word means.
Yeah, behind
insiders. So they're Cro-magnon.
Oh.
And are they Cro-magnon direct from underground, or are they Cro-magnon in the second version, which is called Roma? Because both groups are basically angels, which comes from the word angle. Levels of degrees there. So an angel is prior to the Ice Age. An archangel happened after the ark.
Oh.
The time of Noah's Ark. And that's after the Ice Age. And they are basically messengers. That's basically what I am when I say angel of shit. Ange de la merde in French.
Eat shit.
That's if you use the first letter as an M, but in the code, you start with the second letter. So instead of mange, it becomes ange. So instead of eat, it becomes angel. Angel of shit instead of eat shit. Okay? So that means you come from before the Ice Age in the time of Cro-magnon. If you were manufactured after the Ice Age, then Noah's Ark comes into play. And Noah's Ark is the symbol of genetic engineering started again on the surface of the planet at the time of Noah. If you look at the time frames in the Bible, that would be at a time approximately 3,200 BC or so. So the Genesis and all of that would have come from people acting out things that they knew before the Ice Age, whereas the new stuff happens when they go into Egypt, the time when exists in the way we know of it, happens much later. The dead mummies of Egypt that would have produced the people who came from at the time of Abraham. And Abraham's story is all one of genetic engineering. It's talking about needing to have a baby, and his wife was past the years. And
his wife, and he had a slave to do it.
Slaves and.
What was that? How he made her when he was in Egypt? He pretended that she was his sister. What was that? He told the people that she was his sister, so they wouldn't have sex with her or anything like that.
Well, it's all linked to this concept of having sex with your parents or your close relatives, which is called incest, but could not be any different at the beginning. Because everybody was a brother or sister or son or father. They were all hermaphrodites at one stage of the game. And the only way to make copies is when the male was divided out from the female, and then they started having sex. Who were they going to have sex with? Except their sisters and their mothers.
Yeah.
So, in our life, we are told the story in a way we can't grasp it from the way it's said. It's usually said as an insult. Motherfucker. That's a term that is injurious to the person being accused of being involved in incest. But to the system, it means somebody who was there at the beginning.
Like
fuck you is the same thing.
Yeah.
How do you fuck you? That's the serpent that goes around in a circle and is eating its own tail. That's the wisdom sign. So what's an insult to one person is really a compliment to another.
It's a mirror. I remember reading an older post of yours. You said you were talking about taxman, and then you said we are altered by Matthew. And so I started reading I didn't finish reading the whole book of Matthew.
Yeah.
But what do you mean we were altered? Because he started the whole.
Well, where does the word "mat" apply?
Myth.
It applies in the concept of a mitt, where everybody's in the same glove. But at one stage of the game, the glove that's called the mitt must be destroyed. That's why Johnny Bench is not in the Hall of Fame yet. He was the best catcher that ever lived in baseball. But because he sinned, he bet on his own team, he's been kept out of the Hall of Fame. But today there is a movement to reward him because it's recognized now that you got to go beyond a sin of a day and deal with this in the longer term. Just as we prepare now to leave the planet and establish colonies in other solar systems, a mitt is no longer appropriate. A mitt has to be set aside and replaced with a glove. We are not all going to be in one place, like the myth suggests. And that's the message brought by Michael Jackson and his gloves. There he is, changing colors before your eyes, being extremely talented and athletic, and effeminate at the same time as being male, and being black at the same time as being white. So he's telling you the whole story, and on top of that, he sends his friends a box with a glove, with jewel-encrusted gloves in there.
Now, how that happened with Michael Jackson, like, now you think about it, didn't that just happen over time? That was in his genes? He just, changed?
It's not happening just in his genes. It's happening in his relationships with certain people, among them Elizabeth Taylor, who is basically the one who has guided him through this, and basically he's being used. The same things that happened to Michael Jackson can be made to happen to almost anybody. His talent comes from the genome makeup of the egg they manufactured to make him from. His changing in color is all linked to the environment and chemistry that he's been put under. In the world of mineralogy, they know the answer to all these problems. When you want to have a metal, but you want to change its color and all of that, you go through some chemical processes, metallurgic processes, and you change the components. The same thing can exist with changing the color of a human being. All it is pigmentation under the skin. You change the conditions that allow that pigmentation to reflect a color, and you're going to change the color. That's why at one end you have mulatto, and at the other end you have very, very black people. And in the middle is a range of the same thing as you get at the paint store.
See, this is what I get. That's another thing. Like, I got that from that book at a 12. But like, they have these higher sciences, and I guess that's what you meant by above 40th degree. So different tasks. Because these are people who in different sciences.
Absolutely. Task-specific people. In one of the ranges, and I think it's from 70 to 80 degrees, or 60 to 70 degrees, I forget now. these are 10 people with 10 very different assignments. They represent a field of knowledge.
Yeah.
So you're not born and you join and you're at degree number 1 and work your way up.
No, they're born and they do that their whole life. Yeah, these people, because that's what's hinted at in the book. I see that, and because they openly admit they have these high degrees and all different rights.
You have 90 degrees going up, 90 degrees coming back down,
and that's okay.
And then 90 degrees going underground, and 90 degrees coming up from underground.
And those are all those different rights.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's how they illustrate it.
360 degrees.
Yeah. So what's the most like obscure way you see you've come across of how they illustrate like the symbolism and allegory? Like,
I don't get what you're asking.
Like I'll see they'll have like an allegory clothes like in how they do it in movies. But I'm saying like what's the most like obscure way like that's like not noticed?
Well, in pictures, because a picture is made up with dots, you can introduce a picture within a picture. And you can lighten the dots of that picture down to a point where it's inconsequential to the colored picture you're showing. So, say a person has the equipment to receive a photograph in color on a screen. They can then delete red, delete yellow, delete blue, delete black. And under normal circumstances, that would mean there's nothing left, because that's how they make four-color scanning and printing, whatever. But in this introduction of a new color, which is not deleted, you may not even be able to see it with your naked eye. You then go to the bar on the computer that says, change color. And you say, put it in black. So this color you can't see on the screen all of a sudden becomes a black and white picture. And you have imagery that otherwise could slip through any of the testing mechanisms along the way. Nobody would know the information is being passed on.
So, like
in a movie from Hollywood, since it has 2 hours and 10 minutes or 20 minutes of shots making up a second, you've got thousands of possibilities in one movie to hide a message for somebody that knows it's going to be there, that nobody else will ever see.
So
they have the proper equipment
to
delete the surface stuff. And the same kind of stuff was the concept of Da Vinci's paintings. He used very specific metallic paints that could be seen with certain glasses. Infrared, ultraviolet, all of these things will give you a different image.
Well, you've done that before?
I've seen it. I was building a project called MyCot that was basically a high-tech center. And I came across all of this kind of information along the way from suppliers or from security people. And to me, it made sense, and it wasn't something I felt was difficult to understand, I probably had overstood it in some life before I got here. I'm just a little turd from which they extracted some DNA and manufactured a clone of the last person that had this.
But can't you see what creation does? Like how creation, that's pretty amazing though. How it's like, over time, it becomes what you are today.
Yeah. You're never lost. Your information is always in some form or other. The problem is, it's like radio waves. You can't see them and you don't know where to look. Mm-hmm. But if you find shit, mm-hmm. you know that that's the ultimate product of an animal that lived. Mm-hmm. So since they can take shit that is, millions of years old and put in the proper chemicals that subdivides and extracts the different DNA, they end up knowing this was eaten by this kind of animal.
You said the best way to get somebody's like DNA would be through their shit or like blood or?
The best way is marrow.
Oh, marrow.
From inside the bone. That's why the word arrow is like marrow. It takes you from one place and goes to another in one shot.
So you might think this is weird. So like when people like today, they go and get their colon cleansed, you think that's like a scheme to just get?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything done by the system has an ulterior motive.
Yeah, you're right. There's always the good reason and the real reason.
They take blood from you the minute you're born. So they
take it when people are in jail, incarcerated.
DNA swabs the minute you go to prison or fingerprinted or whatever. It's all basically to make profiles.
Yeah, and I was saying that with my friend, when they bury you, because this is, I guess, pretty recent, they put people in all these really luxurious coffins, and I think what they're trying to do is just stop the DNA from spreading. Preserve
the latest version.
Oh, okay, all right.
Because who I am in this world today is not who I was 10 years ago.
Yeah, because your DNA changes.
My DNA has had an update every day. So my children basically may have got my DNA 40 years ago. But that doesn't mean they could clone me from my children because they're not updated. And that's why it's so important to the system to get your DNA at the last moment. And in Freemasonry, what they do is they have this funeral ceremony.
Oh, yeah.
And they come in and they tell the people that are involved that what they want to do is open the mouth and put a dime under the tongue.
Oh, that's Egyptian.
Because they consider this person to be a candidate to become a future slave. And the 10 cents coin will basically tell anybody who opens the coffin later on. But what they don't tell you is that they take the opportunity to swab the mouth while they're doing it.
Yeah.
And they have it in their files. They can then send it in and have that information on who this person's DNA, what it was on the day it died. And from what I understand, within that whole arrangement of secret societies, they have something like copyrights. And if one group owns your DNA, other groups can't have it. And the best way to acquire the DNA is to have the person sign it over. Then there's never any question as to who owns that formula, that recipe for making you.
Selling your soul.
You're selling your soul to the devil.
Fuck that, man. They could kiss my ass.
Yeah. That's what I told them. They want my DNA and they will finance whatever it is I want. And I said, no, thank you. But my security people say they may just be playing a game here, hoping that I would sell out, but not really believing I would sell out. But they're trying anyways.
The only thing I could see they could do is, like, as soon as you die, they just come inside the property for some reason, or.
But they can't use it if somebody else has ownership.
Or they can use your cesspools or whatever and get that most recent. They have access to that.
My ownership, the DNA I have, I send in updates all the time, 3 times a year.
Does that cost anything? Is it,
no.
I should do that.
It's not me that decided to do it. I was asked to do it by my security people because of who I am and what I was doing. They didn't want to take a chance that I'd be killed in some place at the last minute, and they wouldn't have the current DNA, even though they basically own the rights to it. It's something like a telephone system at the same time. Once they have the formula to your DNA, they can call directly to your medulla and cause you to do things or not do things.
So if they have my DNA from some other faraway location.
If you were born before at another period in time, somebody has your copyright.
Oh my God!
You're basically one of theirs.
But I'm.
What they found out about me is that the DNA copyright that was, I guess, they thought they owned is not in fact of me completely. That I picked up some DNA along the way that goes back to the beginning. Think of it as, I think I've told you this before. A woman has an egg.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The
and
syrup.
you clean it out.
And it leaves a little bit in. Right?
And a little bit has stuck to the inside.
Yeah.
And that's not counted when the guy that's doing the new egg starts filling it up. He puts in what he thinks is a recipe. That is a complete human being. But on the inside, there's this little piece left over from before. And that little piece can cause a total difference in the output product.
That what you're saying right there is in this movie. It's called Dark City.
Dark City?
Dark City.
Dark City.
You really need to watch that movie. It's
got the word art in it, so it's related to genetic engineering.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a city enveloped in darkness. These people, they call them the others, who live underground, and they're all connected, and they change everything in the city, and they give people memories. And what the memories is how they inject it into people's head, but the way how they make the memories is the same way how you talk about the DNA.
Yeah.
How they do it. So it's pretty interesting.
Well, all of these people listen in to the conversations, check the web and everything, and anytime they see anything that's posted or they're sent material from the telephone company, their job is to turn it into fiction. So they write a script from the material they hear, and that means anybody later on that comes along and says, this is what I know, they can say, nah, that's fiction. You saw that in a
Man.
That's what Hollywood is all about.
Yeah. It's a science.
They are muses who come to harm or assist.
So you say my DNA is copyrighted?
Yep. Everybody's DNA is copyrighted.
Oh, yeah, I think.
And a group like the Mormons, for example, they have the computer that tracks your DNA through your surname. They know that surnames were only given by two people in the past. You had no surname unless your king or your master mason allowed you to have a surname. Therefore, they can track where everybody basically was at a time in the past through the surname. That's why they keep that big computing outfit at Salt Lake City underground.
But like my whole, I think I told you this before, like it's hard for myself to even track that. They could probably do it pretty easily.
You can't track it. You have to have
money,
all of the equipment and knowledge and data and all of that stuff that goes with it.
I would love to know how far, like my history. So.
Well, just by the fact that I know you have a functioning brain, you couldn't have got that in one lifetime. Because of your journey through hell to get here, you had to be important in the concept of their task. Because hell was the training center.
Well, I see in this life right now, I could see how I helped, the agenda. I helped this whole conspiracy.
You were probably some kind of priest, along the way in places like Egypt and Cambodia and India and Sri Lanka. Came with the Roma, got married in with Africans, may even have been Cro-magnon before the Ice Age.
But I think now, because now I'm conscious of it, like, I think that creation gave me that chance to decide,
You're on a journey. The journey is to learn.
Yeah.
And once you experience and you learn, you get a chance to remember with creation.
Yeah, it's funny what happened with my family. The other day, I learned that I came home and my brother was like, the FBI was here, and I was like, what? Are you serious? And they were looking actually, it was for my father, because supposedly when he went to the cell phone store or the phone to pay his phone bill, somebody said that they overheard him saying something about 9/11 or something, and something about him saying that there would be another 9/11 or something, and they called this FBI or whatever. And I know my father, he has a temper, but I don't think he would. And he's not, he doesn't know how to act in front of people. But I know that he wouldn't say that. I know that's not something he would say, because he believes in all the bullshit like everybody else. So I'm thinking, I'm thinking that sometimes I think it's like a message or something to me. Like they just.
Well, you never really know what a person is because he can be activated.
Oh.
So a person can be, quiet, normal person next door, and all of a sudden go off and shoot people in a school. So all of the people we believe we know can, in fact, be turned on or off to be totally different. Until they know how the system works, they can't prevent it.
Yeah, it's another thing, too. I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and she was telling me, like, how, like, her mother was, like, was talking about this stuff, what you're saying, like, was talking about DNA and genetic engineering, but she has a different angle on it, and basically was saying that the World Trade Centers would fall down in the 70s, and she got off from the Bible. And, like, now, like, suppose, I don't know, like she's, like, it seems might be, like, losing her sanity. You think, like, this stuff can make people lose their sanity, or they can make you lose your sanity?
Well,
have you ever seen anybody you know who knew this information, like, lose it?
You don't lose your sanity because you know things. You lose sanity if you don't know how to deal with the things you know.
All right.
If one was talking about how can I put this? You see conspiracies everywhere, therefore you must be crazy. That makes sense if there are no conspiracies everywhere. But if there really are conspiracies everywhere, then does it make sense? Are you insane or out of sanity? Are you in sanity or out of sanity?
The prescribed sanity, right?
This all comes down to the system sets convention.
Yep.
And the convention is what the psychiatrist tells you must accept. And if you say, the evidence that I have gathered suggests that these conventions are wrong, that they are made for the purpose of control, but they are not based on facts. The psychiatrist says, you're eccentric.
Yeah.
That means you're not centered on the convention.
That's in that book too, at a 12.
And I would say, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't want to be centric.
Yeah, it's all systemized. And
I want to be able to analyze and conclude things myself, based upon only one thing: evidence.
Yeah. But what you see, that's the thing. What you consider evidence, what you accepted as facts, their narrow education won't let them do that.
What they do is what I use. They have two models. One model they use in a court of law. That model says when you have received preponderance of the circumstantial evidence, you have a duty to believe that that constitutes proof in a court of law. That's number one. So it's not direct evidence. It's preponderance of circumstantial evidence. Okay? The second thing is indirect evidence can also be used when based upon the normal rules of physics. If one is able to see a planet making a unusual journey through the solar system, in other words, its orbit is not fixed upon a central point, but it makes an elliptical orbit, or it has some kind of a zigzag motion or whatever, you have the right to believe, although you cannot see it, that there is something out there, out of your sight, which has a gravity pull effect on this thing you can see orbit. And you can take as granted that there is something else out there which you cannot see. Both those things allow me to analyze all of the material that I read and study and decipher and come to the conclusions that I come to. And my conclusions are equal at least to any convention, and I put to you better than all conventions, since I am not starting off the journey with an agenda, and they are. They are making conventions based upon the conclusions they want to achieve. I am making my arguments based upon the evidence that I have seen, whether direct or indirect, including my reasoning and including my intuition.
That's
which
another
is
thing.
Evidence of the past.
That's like I said, you accepted facts that most people won't even consider intuition.
No, that's because they have a different agenda. They don't know where intuition comes from, and they are being managed by people who want to give them their agenda for short-term benefit, i.e., making more friends, having a simpler life, having monetary rewards. Any of these things can cause people to accept things other than reality. And when you consider that the system has defined their secret societies and themselves into 3+1 groups and given them names, you have the group that has the name Earth, which is linked to the ear, which means they overhear things. Then you have the next group, which is called C, which basically you get two versions. The Vatican is the Holy See, and we men living as women get to see what happens when the door to the bedroom is closed and their mason is sharing his secrets with his wife. Yeah. That's the C part. Then the third part is the sky, the places you haven't been to yet, but are going to and gathering information. Those are the three groups of secret societies. So NASA and Jet Propulsion Laboratory and people like that would fit into the group called Sky. Religious people and women who aren't women would fit into the C category, and Bell Canada and Shell Oil and those people would fit into the category of Earth.
You know, I think about like on this journey, and I know it's happened to you probably, and like, and I know it's, you know, it happens to a lot of people, but as you know, go through this journey and like you expose it and learn more, like I think certain people, like we men, and
Yeah.
and maybe it or just men or just other men will get sent towards your direction and
Yeah, they're
try.
called Essenes.
Essenes are the only ones.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like a wee man woman that will get sent towards my direction and
Yeah, in
try to become
real life.
involved. What happened?
In real life.
Yeah.
There are two groups of people, one sent to help and one sent to hinder. The Essenes are sent to hinder.
Mm.
The groups sent to help are called the cell.
Yeah.
Cellular memory
Mm.
basically means intuitive memory, memory or information that is gained through sensory means, such as the hair, such as cats, such as the ability of dogs to hear or smell differently than people.
Mm.
You know, all of these sensory things are the property of a group of people which are, in my world, called the cell. They overhear all the conversations that people are having in both a sensory manner and in a tracking manner by over-listening the listeners set up to spy on people. Like Bell Canada has people who spy on people, and then when they figure something is important, they pass it on to the group's reader analyst. But in the middle of that journey, the cell gets to know what is being talked about. And they're like the policeman's policeman.
Well,
They can provide information of a conspiracy being handled by the Prime Minister's office. For example, in my time, the Prime Minister's chief of staff on a secure line is talking with Bell Canada and telling each other in the conversation that I am being used in order to acquire a piece of property that Bell Canada wants for a building that will give them access to underground and the Ottawa River. And when I've completed my purchase of all of the property, they will do things to cause the project that I'm working on to shut down so that my partners can then sell that property to Bell Canada. And this is all on secure lines. But the cell knows this. They've recorded it. I'm just paraphrasing basically what they've told me. And all of these things will be used at the appropriate time to bring it to a court, what they call a court of appropriate justice. They don't believe that the courts we have today can be defined as appropriate justice. They are all of rigged justice.
and these people, this cell, this group is part of this system.
It's part of the existing system, but they would be described as defective by most of the system.
Oh, okay.
They refuse to believe the bullshit.
Yeah.
They're like me. I'm defective when it comes to my DNA following instructions. They had programmed me to follow certain instructions, and I broke away from it, mind you.
That's just like the Matrix. These programs that just in the movie they have these programs that just when they're done with their program, or they just go defective and go their own way.
If there's some reason that the person puts reason ahead of treason, they're called defective within the system. Treason is just a telephone pole in front of the word reason. So most people get their reason from people who are traitors. And therefore, convention is useless to people who care about reality.
This is like what you're saying. It's like a big body politic. Big, like the computers. They have one on one side. It's like left brain, right brain, and then you have all the other, like us and all these groups. It's like cells and stuff in the body.
Yeah.
It's like wow.
All they have to do is make it uncomfortable for most people, and they will stop doing what they're doing. But there are some people out there that it doesn't matter how uncomfortable you make it. They're not going to go on a journey that follows treason rather than reason. So you have to decide at one stage, when you know the facts, based upon all of the circumstantial evidence and direct evidence you've acquired in your first 40 years of living, what's reason? And are you prepared to defend reason in the face of treason? Or are you rather going to look for instant gratification and see if somebody will pay you to be stupid?
That's what a lot of people are doing today.
The majority of the people around the world.
Yeah. And that's how they do it. They use instant gratification is a big tool.
Yeah. They don't grasp the concept of the length of eternity.
Yeah.
They don't grasp the concept that they ain't going to be around once they get thrown back into the big stew pot.
And the reason why they do that is because the ego, like you said, it's rounds of ego. We really do well because of that little.
Think of the word Rego as the lord of the underworld called ogre.
Ogre. Yeah. Oh, man.
I gotta go.
It's
time for me to go say goodnight to the animals.
Well, tell them I said goodnight, and
they're wondering when you're gonna arrive.
Man, I gotta call the central office and do all these things and get a letter of
permission.
Yeah.
Permission to cross the border.
Just to walk on a piece of land, man.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But I'm gonna get it done.
Okay.
All right, Glenn.
Bye for now.
Okay, bye.